Welcome to IWMW 2017, the 21st Annual Institutional Web Management Workshop. Our theme this year is It's the End of the Institution as We Know It, and We Feel Fine. The full programme for the event can be found at IWMW.org. We will be live streaming all of the main plenary sessions thanks to our sponsors, Terminal 4. We very much welcome questions from our online audience, so if you have a question for any of our speakers, please tweet it to @IWMW Live and we will ask it on your behalf during the relevant Q&A. Please join the conversation on Twitter using the IWMW17 hashtag. You can also join the community's HE Digital channel on Slack at he-digital.slack.com. Thank you for your attention. We now go live to King's College at the University of Kent for today's first presentation.
Okay, and good afternoon, everybody. It's almost 1:45. We're going to try and... Oh, the light's out.
I didn't do anything.
Too much? I think that's probably okay.
Where is it?
Thanks, Claire. And welcome to IWMW 2017. The theme of this year's event, it's the end of the institution as we know it, and we feel fine. Actually, and it's kind of interesting that I noticed this in the Observer on Sunday. You don't need a double first to see university funding is in chaos. I think we know about this, and this, the next 3 days are very much about the context that we face ourselves in higher education with a remit to supporting the digital aspect of our university activities. We have two speakers in this session, and I'll be giving a 15-minute introduction. I should just say that the plenary talks, are being live streamed. So hello to the, I think it's 4 people at the moment who are watching this live stream. It was just advertised about half an hour ago. And we will be making recordings of the talks available afterwards, subject to permission from the various speakers. But remember, if you want to ask a question and you're a bit worried about it, or a bit worried about what your bosses may say you're from the University of Poppleton and put on a funny voice so people won't recognise you. So, over to my slides. So I'm the founder of the IWMW event and the co-chair of this year's event, and my colleague Claire Gibbons is a fellow co-chair who will be introducing herself shortly. Bit of a context to this. It was founded by myself in my first year at an organisation known as UCON, which was based at the University of Bath. And my first major task was to run an event for university web managers in my role as UK Web Focus. So set up an event, a 2-day event at King's College London, and then it was over. And I thought, right, I'm glad I can put that behind me. I've done that. But it became popular, it became established now as a 3-day event. And it was continued until 2013, when we held what we thought would be the final event at the University of Bath, because the JISC funding of UCON finished a month later. But then people were saying we need to continue this. There's a community, there's continued interest in this area. So we looked and we discovered that yes, we could continue it. So we've continued the event, and now we're 21. The event is 21. So we'll be celebrating over the next few days. So there'll be a combination of the plenary talks in this room and the various parallel workshop sessions later today and masterclass sessions tomorrow afternoon. This event is also an amplified event with the videoing and the live tweeting. And just to say that you are free for my talk. We encourage people to tweet and to share slides and to photograph and the like. If you're using Twitter, the hashtag is IWMW17, and something that can be useful if you also give the hashtag for the session code. So this is P0. This can be particularly useful for the parallel sessions. You see a tweet which says, "This was the best talk ever and it's changed my life," and there are 10 parallel sessions and you don't know which one it refers to. So that can be really, really useful. It can be helpful for the speakers and the presenters when they go back and see how people reacted to things, the things they disagreed with, the things they agreed with. So we'd ask you to be respectful, but you can also, we would encourage you to be criticised constructively. So that's the event amplification. But this year, we're encouraging use of a new tool called Slack. Can I just have a show of hands? How many people are using the Slack IWMW? So that's probably about half of the audience. So this is good. I was introduced to this tool by a couple of members of the advisory group a year ago. And this year we formally use the tool on a weekly basis for planning for this event. And we're great fans of it. So a few months ago we set up the HE Digital group, and in that group there's an IWMW 2017 channel, and we've been chatting. And just to say, we'll use this for various admin purposes. And something I just realised a few minutes ago, you should have the name of your the code for your workshop session, but you don't know which room it's in. So I've just sent that information on the Slack channel, and we'll try and get it to you in other ways, but that will be something to look at. So that tool might be quite useful for those type of late-minute admin type purposes. And we also heard on Slack that a number of people have been delayed coming down. There's been a fatality on the rail line just north of Milton Keynes, and I think this has affected people travelling on the West Coast main line. So we're likely to expect more people arriving. Does anyone know how they're getting on? It might be worth asking on the Slack channel. Pardon?
We reported it, and I'm here.
Ah, great. That's great. Okay, so the context. So this is a brief summary of the first day and few sessions tomorrow. So we have the theme, and this is this main theme, the end of the institution as we know it, and we feel fine, will be addressed in the plenary sessions, and there is a different sub-theme on the various days. 15 plenary talks. I should mention that one of the plenary talks on the final day has been cancelled due to the unavailability of the speaker, so 15 plenary talks. And in addition, we have the 10 workshop sessions, which last for 90 minutes later today, and the masterclasses tomorrow, plus the social programme. So that's what we get today. But let's just put this in some type of context and say, How does it compare with what we did back in 1997? Anybody at that event? No, Helen not. Oh, there you are, Helen. So one person who was there at that event. So looking back, that was just 2 days, 15 speakers, smaller scale, 97 people at that event. And when I look at the content there, it was mostly technology, web tools, database integration, networking for webmasters, and caching. We used to talk a lot about caching in those early days, and those were often given by the experts, leading experts in the country who'd come down to say this is how networking works, this is database integration. And if you look at that programme, that's a full programme, there were only really 2 from the community, or 2 that would still be relevant today. Colin Work on information flow. And down at the bottom we have a discussion group on the trials and tribulations of a web editor by Jeremy Speller and Damon Querry. Both of those topics, I think we could still run them today, but others it's changed. So we have saw that change. And then when I was looking yesterday at some of the old slides, is Miles here? Yes, Miles Banbury. These were the slides that Miles, I think he might have been reporting on a discussion group on Whose Site Is It Anyway in 1999, and his slides are still available. I was thinking of asking Miles, give this talk and make it comprehensible and relevant to today, so to see really how we have moved on. So we might ask if he can do that tonight. We'll get him a few drinks and we can ask him later on tonight. But there is this continuity, but also change. So this year we have 43 speakers. Now that is about a third of the audience. So just look to the person on your left, the person on your right, and yourself. One of those 3 people is statistically likely to be a speaker. So put your thumbs up, put your hands up if you're one of those people who is speaking here. So you can all see lots and lots of people here. You're the people who are sharing your experiences, telling stories about the use of the web in your particular context. So we were learning very much from our peers, but also from the wider sector as well. And if we look, we can see up at the top that Adam Frank, who's from a Squiz, who's running a session. Then a number of people, I think the rest of the people on that first page are from the sector. The web editors, the web team managers, the head of web services, head of systems, web content editors, and the like. Incidentally, I don't know what all the job titles are. I didn't ask this on the registration form today. But outside on the wall, there's a whiteboard, and you can put up a post-it note, and you can put your job title, so we can see about those, the roles we have. And what we have, I realised, was a community of practice. And this is a summary from Wikipedia. Community of practice, people who share a craft or a profession. And it's a community which can evolve naturally because of common interests that we have, or it can be created deliberately with the goal of gaining knowledge through the process of sharing information and experiences. So this is what this event is. And this event, and the plenary talks in particular, are those ones which are created deliberately. The advisory group says, these are what we feel are the key issues, the key topics. Here are some good speakers. So we manage that and we create this environment. But there are also things that will evolve. It might be just semi-organised. So the workshops and masterclasses might provide more of an opportunity for people, everybody in the session, to talk about the things that are relevant to them. And then we have the things that you might do. The birds of a feather session. We're talking yesterday, 2 topics came up in the pub yesterday of people felt passionate about. One was about the miseries of restructuring. Anybody experience that? And then, yeah, and then somebody else says, oh, no. The biggest grief we have is we're all silos. It's really crazy. Our university needs to be restructured. So it's kind of interesting that, isn't it? But there is, outside again, on the post-it, you can get a post-it note and say, I'd be really interested in a particular area. And meet up, there'll be opportunities to have the informal meetups in the bar, tables tonight, various opportunities over the next 3 days. And these communities of practice have existed for a long time, and it's about learning and sharing experiences through storytelling. And so for the next 3 days, You'll listen to some storytellers, and hopefully you will tell your own stories as well. So the event, it's a community event, exists for the community, the web management or the digital community. And rather than expecting the community to travel to a central location, which normally it would be London, or JISC have been using Birmingham for a number of years, we made a decision 21 years ago to go out to the community. So as far south and east as Canterbury, we were here in 2003 as well, then over to Northern Ireland, and as far north as Aberdeen. So travelled across the country, which has some implications. Some of you might be moaning about the time you had to set off yesterday or perhaps this morning, particularly the train problems, but it has some advantages as well. There are people here local, from Canterbury or from the region, so it's convenient for those people. And we get to see a different institution, different way of working, different environment. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who thinks, what a lovely campus this is. And isn't it absolutely amazing when you get the bus down the hill on a bright sunny day and you can see the cathedral and you can see the town? Absolutely wonderful. So for me, it's like being on holiday, isn't it? It's great, it's great. So we have the events, the community, we have the speakers, and we have the delegates. This is you. So this year, 136 registered delegates are on the form. I asked for a number of previous events you'd been to. 40%, so roughly 40% of delegates are here for the first time. And this is amazing. This is a new generation of people. So I'm really pleased to have these new people who are coming along. And there'll be old fogies like myself, or slightly younger fogies like Claire, and sometimes think we are the rock dinosaurs, and there's going to be a whole new generation of people with new ways of doing things and new interests, and we need to talk and we need to engage and understand these things. But this event now belongs to those new people, the ones who've been here for the first time. Show of hands if you're a first timer. Wow. And maybe if you've been to one other event before, you went to maybe last year's events, another significant percentage of people. It was also interesting that quite a significant proportion of females in the audience, and as I say, 43 speakers and workshop facilitators, which is the largest ever. So this is the largest ever IWMW event, not in terms of the numbers of the audience. There was 197 in 2008, but in terms of the numbers of speakers and facilitators. And overall, 43 this year, 41 the previous year. Add them all up and you come to 666 speakers, but they're all not unique speakers. There have actually been 372 individuals who've spoken at the 21 events. 43 speakers, 28 from a higher educational institution, 11 from the commercial sector, and of the 14 plenary speakers who work at a university, 10 are first-time speakers at the event. This is really, really great. There are some of the old fogies who are going to come along and talk. Is Paul Boag arrived yet? Oh, that's right. It's okay. I can say that. And it's also good that a number of the speakers are also first-time attendees at an IWMW event itself. And it's not just men in suits speaking, 12 female speakers as well. I mention these things because in Northumbria a few years ago, one of the female speakers was saying, is she the only female speaker? And she was, and we said we must do something about this, so we have been doing something about this. And then we have the sponsors. The sponsors are members of this community as well. Many of the companies have been involved for a number of years. They not only they fund the events and they fund the social events and prizes and conference drinks and dinners and barbecues and all of those things, but it's also an opportunity for you to go and talk to them and for them to listen to you. They find it really valuable listening to you, what your concerns are, what your interests are. As well as the commercial sponsors, we also have an individual sponsor this year, Adrian Tribe, who used to be the web editor at University of Birkbeck, but finished his job recently, and as a token of the importance of this community to him and his professionalism, he provided some money which funded a sponsored place at this event. This is all part of this community. And then we have the advisor group, which has an important role to play in shaping the content and promoting the content and supporting the events. But we also have the longer term issue. So for a long time, the event was organised by UConn and was supported by, managed by UConn. And then after UConn ceased to exist, the event was organised by myself jointly with NetSkills. And then 2015-16 organised just by me. So it was 3 years in which it didn't really have that bigger kind of support. So I regard this as, it was being at university, but now we're 21 and we're grown up, and we need to address those issues about the sustainability and the risks of being reliant on a single person. So I'm going to ask Claire just to come along. So this year I invited Claire to formally be my co-chair and have particular responsibilities for links with sponsors and the social programme. So Claire, over to you.
Hi. Are the microphones on? Yeah, good. Okay, cool. So hi, I'm Claire. I'm the co-chair, as you can see there. Most of you, well, some of you might know me from the University of Bradford, so I was there for 19 years. I was the web manager, also managed marketing, social media, video and all that sort of stuff throughout the years. And this time last year, I was in a strange situation in that I was going through a massive restructure to the point where 3 weeks later I had no job. So I went freelance. And now I'm here, which is great. I've done a bit of work with Terminal 4 and Loughborough University. Where's Loughborough? Stephen here. Go Loughborough, yeah. So it's great. I think what's really important is this community and the value of getting to know people and understand how different people work and learn from each other. So do really make the most of the networking and the social. There are a few social things going on. We had a quiz in the pub last night, which was good fun. I think people enjoyed that. There's some activities tonight at the Do, so we'll probably tell you a bit more about the dinner in the break, or should we say that now about the dinner?
Go say it now.
Yeah, so the dinner tonight is over at Rutherford Hall, which is about a 5-minute walk over the other side of campus. If people want, we can always meet up in the foyer here and walk over, or you can just wind your way through campus. So there's a drinks reception at 7, and then dinner starts at 7:30. There's a few things going on there. Has everybody got a people bingo card? Good, yes, organised fun, yes. So if you want to fill those in, do bits of swapsies. I don't like spiders, if anyone needs that. And it's also loads of things that I can tick off. And there's a big black box by reception to put them in, and there's some prizes at the barbecue tomorrow for those. So there's a barbecue tomorrow, that starts at 6, with food at 6:30, and then it finishes at 8 tomorrow, and then people are free to go into the town. So again, I think probably a few of us will go into town and find a pub of some description. Brian's already mentioned the what's your job title, and we've also got a thing about Room 101. So if there's something in particular that you would just like to assign to Room 101, stick a post-it note on the wall. There might be some prizes for those a bit later on. And also, the Birds of a Feather sessions. That is basically if people just want to chat and meet up about anything over lunch, over dinner. And again, I've seen that a few people have put those on already. That's it. After the dinner tonight, if people are still up for it, as it were, the K-Bar, which is just by Dolce Vita, is open till 11. So again, I'm sure some of us will wander back. I think that's it for now.
Great
to see everybody.
Thank you.
See you later.
And so Claire mentioned some prizes, and there will be some opportunities for session chairs to give out some prizes, but I'm conscious we're a few minutes over, so I'll defer that for a bit and go over to Bonnie Ferguson. If you'd like to come over, and the fascinating title of your talk, the UK's European University in a Time of Brexit. So I think that's your slides. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a little snafu with PowerPoint, so I'm going to be trying to organize myself across 2 laptops. It might not work, but I'll do my best. So let's just get over. Right, well, as Brian says, my name's Bonnie Ferguson, and I'm the head of systems here at the University of Kent. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to our beautiful city of Canterbury, and also, obviously, to the University of Kent. It's really exciting to bring this talented group of people together for such an exciting event. And I'm really interested in a lot of the topics we're going to be covering over the next 3 days. Things about students as humans I thought sounded really interesting, building collaborative cultures and making change happen. You probably already know a little bit about Canterbury already, and it sounds like some of you went to the Dolphin last night, which I hope you enjoyed. I think it's a really great pub. But if you know a little bit about Canterbury, you probably know that, I think Brian mentioned that IWMW was held here 14 years ago in 2003. And Canterbury is known for a lot of different things. There's lots of history. There's obviously the Canterbury Cathedral, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and you probably had to read the Canterbury Tales, or some of them, when you were at school. And I think it's most notable, the Canterbury Tales charts 27 pilgrims on their way to Canterbury, making a pilgrimage to the shrine of Thomas Becket, who was martyred there. And perhaps the most notable was the Wife of Bath's tale, in which he demonstrates the benefits of allowing women to have control of their marriages and decisions within their marriages. So that's one of my favorites. We'll be doing a quiz about Canterbury at the barbecue tomorrow night. And so you'll learn lots more about Canterbury and the University of Kent there. So don't miss that. So it's a picture of our campus here, and we did have a wheel there. It's not there at the moment, unfortunately, so we can't take a ride on it. But the first students arrived at the University of Kent in 1965, and so we had a 50th anniversary a couple of years ago. We've now grown to having 20,000 students and about 4,000 staff. We're a top 20 university, and we've recently received a gold award for our TEF, so we're really excited, feeling immensely proud of this achievement. So welcome, and I'm going to start my more formal section of my talk now. So Brexit for the UK's European University. What did this mean to us? So, like many universities, we were quite surprised by the results of the Brexit referendum last year in June 2016. And I think this uncertainty, it's not just us that's questioning, a lot of the changes that are going to be on the horizon. Questions about, will EU students still be able to study at UK universities? What's this going to do to the tuition fees for our EU students? And we know here at the University of Kent, we have a large proportion of students, I think about 15% are from the EU, so obviously it's a big impact for them. Will EU students still be able to be eligible to receive loans and grants? Just realized that's the slide I want, asking questions. And what about students on Erasmus programs? Are there going to be any changes there? And will we still be able to be eligible for EU funding for research and innovation, like Horizon 2020 and the ESIFs? And finally, what about the staff here from different countries and from the EU? Are their visas still going to be valid? So I think we all shared these kind of questions, but I think it was even more relevant for us at the University of Kent because we had declared ourselves as the UK's European university. And I think when Brexit happened, we could have kind of lost our identity at that point and tried to find another unique selling point. And I think a lot of people were really, really worried about whether we'd be able to keep and hold on to this. But instead of doing that, instead of losing our identity, our senior management were able to decide that we were going to make a European pledge and further affirm our status as the UK's European university. So our European pledge confirms that we're going to continue to champion and extend our unique position. We're going to continue to develop our European centres as a gateway to the world. And we have European centres in Paris, in Brussels, in Athens, and Rome, so continue to extend those. We'll be forging new partnerships in Europe, maintaining and increasing mobility opportunities for our students and staff, and participate as widely as we can in European networks. And at the university, we have 150 nationalities represented, and 37% of our teaching and research staff come from outside the UK, not necessarily in Europe, but it's really an important thing to us. So in short, we've turned our position as the UK's European university into an even stronger identity, I think, on the back of Brexit. And we're working hard to attract students who embrace diversity and openness, who are interested in European languages and cultures, people who welcome opportunities to go abroad and study at some of the European centres, and enjoy working with people and studying with people with different outlooks. In fact, we had an open day not long after the Brexit referendum, and we had some T-shirts printed up. And I think this summed up very well what we decided our stance was going to be on Brexit. So politically, it's been quite an interesting time to be at Kent. There's been a lot of lectures and panels and discussions, and it feels like kind of a renewed interest in politics. And we also had an interesting turnout in the latest general election. And so you may have seen the press coverage that one of the most surprising things that came out in the 2017 general election was that the student vote had a big impact in some of the bigger university cities like Sheffield, Wolverhampton, and Canterbury. And up to that point, Canterbury had had a Conservative MP for the last 99 years. I read one article that said we held a world record for the longest number of years held by a single party. I'm not sure if that's true. I couldn't really back that up. But basically, because of the student vote, and you can see what Julian Brazier is saying there, he felt that was a big factor in him losing his seat in Canterbury going over to Labour this year. So this election was largely down to student engaged voters, and we kind of felt that the whole, kind of fervor around Brexit and things like that helped students decide to go out and vote this year. I sort of looked up, I think there were 78% of students between ages, in their early 20s went out to vote, which was much higher than the national average. So change is in the air. And they say that change is the only constant. I don't think anyone really would have predicted the changes last year in terms of Brexit, in terms of Canterbury's change, in terms of Donald Trump becoming president of the United States. That was a bit of a shocker. But I think HE institutions are traditionally quite resistant to change. And this can be quite counterproductive in a time where there is just a lot of change. There's been a lot of articles I've been reading about what universities will look like in 2020, 2030, 2040. And I'd like to explore a little bit of that now. Sorry, that was our students queued at the polling station, so I forgot to. Okay, and he's bringing change. Sorry, I got a little behind on my slides because, okay, so change is in the air. Right, so I've been reading about universities. A lot of the articles seem to talk about, robots starting to teach classes and distance learning and just a lot of stuff that either seems a little bit fantastic or seems like we're already doing and everyone knows about anyway. But the one change that really kind of hit home is that I think we're likely to see employers and industry playing a much bigger funding role. And I think Brian touched on the kind of finances and that being really quite important to universities. And as we rely on industry funding for courses, we may even lose control of our curriculum. And I think this can be demonstrated, we're seeing it through our apprenticeship schemes. And that we're teaming up with a number of big pharmaceuticals to offer pharmaceutical type apprenticeships. And I know you guys have all heard of apprenticeships, you might be offering them as well, where students actually only spend about 20% of their time studying and the rest of the time is working and earning a wage. And so they're able to graduate, not only, they have no student fees, so probably graduating without debt and a lot of great experience. But you can see the impact that the degree programs, so the name of the apprenticeships are much more related to sort of gaps in the labor market, industry type names, which is quite an interesting kind of change. And the degree levels that we're offering with this are mainly 4 and 5, which are equivalent to certificates, diplomas, and foundation degrees. The full bachelor's degrees are level 6, master's degree level 7. So I think we'll probably develop those, but a lot of these at the moment are kind of foundation level. And as you know, these programs are done in partnership, and this trajectory seems to be continuing, and I think the sponsorship by corporates, by big corporates, is going to continue. And I've been reading a lot of things saying that, is there going to be a Google University soon? Is there going to be private university competition in the UK? We obviously have a lot of private universities in the States already, but none quite so linked with a corporation. So I think that'll be an interesting something maybe on the horizon. Okay. So it's definitely an interesting time to be in HE. And right, so interesting time to be in HE, but in HE often it feels like our standard approach is to try to understand the change and kind of bunker down and get ready for it. We want to be resilient, we want to withstand change, but often it's also about trying to keep doing things roughly in the same way and to validate the way we're currently doing things. And I've recently been looking at maybe there's a better way to do this. So I want to first just talk about fragility and kind of fragile ways of doing things. So starting out with fragile. So when you see fragile, you throw out some words. What do you think of? What kind of things are fragile? A bit of audience participation.
My ego.
Oh no, your ego. First thing that came to my mind was actually legacy websites. But I think things like teacups and fine porcelain and that kind of thing. And so if you think about what is the opposite of fragile, if I bumped into you on the street and said, what's the opposite of fragile, what would you say?
Strong and stable.
Strong and stable. Cool. So maybe robust, resilient, things forged out of steel and battleships and concrete bunkers. However, I've been reading the book Anti-Fragile, Things That Gain from Disorder. I don't know if anyone's read that. Anyone's favorite book? Oh, good. It's like, okay. So the author, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, points out that there's actually in the English language no direct opposite for the word fragile. So he's coined the term anti-fragile. And that's things that are not only strong and resilient and robust, they're actually things that benefit from shocks. They love stress, they love randomness and volatility and disorder, and they grow from it. And the analogy, wind puts out a candle but encourages fire, is the kind of thing he kept repeating through the book. And I got quite fascinated by this. So he talks about a triad of fragile, robust, and anti-fragile. And I kind of want to just sort of touch on all three of these. I think fragile is the one, obviously, we're more familiar with. So this is stuff that hates uncertainty because it's a threat. And so one lovely example he gave in the book was a kid being raised by helicopter parents. So parents that try to prevent them from, sort of protect them from everything and wrap them in bubble wrap and things like that. And it actually prevents them from developing the ability to bounce back and sort of deal with problems. And our colleagues in the registry have told me about how some parents will actually check into a local B&B here in Canterbury for their students' first week at university to help them through. And I just thought, the first week your parents hanging around, that's the last thing you want. So, arg. Okay, robust. So, the Moai on Easter Island, I think you're all familiar with them. They're made from volcanic rock. They've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. They fall down, but you can stand them back up and they'll withstand history. What I found out last year was that all the Moai are unique, and they all have different expressions. They're different sizes. Some of them are in different positions, and there's even women Moai, which I hadn't realized before, which is great. Okay, finally, anti-fragile. So anti-fragile that loves uncertainty because it grows from shocks. So things like the human body. So obviously they say if you break a bone, it might come back stronger, and that kind of thing. And that really evolution is the essence of anti-fragility. So while individual organisms are fragile, the gene pool takes advantage of these shocks to increase its fitness. And in fact, Charles Darwin mentions this in The Origin of Species, that it's not the strongest of the species that survives, it's not the most intelligent that survives, but it's the one that's most adaptable to change. Okay, so it's my Charles Darwin one. Okay, so anti-fragility is really behind everything that grows and changes with time. And that's demonstrated through the evolution of animals, culture, ideas, and even good recipes. And I'd like to illustrate that with a few examples. So I mentioned that the human body gets stronger when it gets worked out and stressed. And I think some of the recent trends in health and fitness really demonstrate this. So it's not enough to just go out for a little jog. You need to go out for a run as if you're being chased by a caveman. And it's not enough to just do a bit of weightlifting. You need these kettlebells that you kind of lift and you throw around and you do lots of range of movements. And I think the idea is that, you're being chased by this saber-toothed tiger. And So the high intensity functional movements, they help burn fat quicker and they build muscles quicker and they make you stronger. There's also a trend, I don't know if anyone's tried the fasting diets that are the 5-2 diets where you starve yourself for 2 days, then you eat whatever you want for 5 days. I know at least one person who's tried it back there. And the idea is that shock to your body kind of kicks in some chemical processes that not only lead to the weight loss that you're looking for, but also can have some beneficial effects in terms of life expectancy, protection against cancer, and protection against dementia. There's not tons of evidence at the moment, but this is the kind of thing, the body of evidence that they're working up. So, and similarly, minds need to be challenged. So solving difficult problems is good. Coming to these kind of groups and having interesting conversations is good. And I think there's been lots of studies that people are actually happier when they work, even though it doesn't feel like it. And if you think about the counter example, people who stay within their comfort zone, who sit and watch box sets all the time, become more scared and timid year by year and eventually just sort of close their world up. So I think it's important really to sort of keep your mind challenged, keep your body challenged. And there's, I think we've all heard of overcompensation. There's actually such a thing as undercompensation as well, which I only recently found out about. And undercompensation, when there's not enough challenge, complacency can set in and you find you actually lose your skills. So it's said that the best race horses lose when running against slow horses, but they win against faster competitors. They've also found similar things with pilots. When they automate too many of the processes, that the pilots sort of get a dulled awareness and start to lose their skills, and it's actually resulted in higher levels of accidents. So they're actually backing off on some of the automation to make sure the pilots still stay engaged with what they're doing. And I think all this kind of thinking really allows us to put a different lens on change and chaos. Okay, change is on the horizon, there's these different funding models, it's all a challenge, but maybe that makes us bigger and stronger and faster. It's not a threat, it actually is good for us. However, not all stress is created equal. If you think about the Chinese water torture with a small drip on your head, or some of your colleagues that just wind you up constantly, that kind of low-level stressor can be quite depressing and quite bad for you. However, it's the kind of the one-off shocks, the big stresses, the events that rock your world, and those are known as black swan events. Does anyone know about the black swan story, why they're called black swan events? Anyone? Yes?
Would you like me to explain it?
Yes, please. Give me a break.
I can't remember the country version, but the theory was that the only colour swans that had been seen in this country were white. And it was assumed that all swans all over the world were white until one day the black swan comes to win in a particular lake.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, well, so black swans were discovered, and that was used now to describe sort of big effects, big changes that you really didn't see coming, that really challenged your view of the world. So I think some of the examples we've already talked about, Brexit, Donald Trump, natural disasters like tsunamis and earthquake in big cities, things like that can act as black swan events. And the definition of a black swan event, it really has 3 properties. One is rarity. So the black swan event is a rare event, and it lies outside the realm of common experience. Nothing like it in your past is likely to allow you to predict it. The second factor is the extreme impact. So when a black swan comes along, it does have a massive impact. Obviously, things like a tsunami or something like that, it could make everything else just pale into insignificance around it. And it can mean a single event can dominate all other factors. And the final factor, which is a little bit trickier, which is retrospective predictability. And this is the idea that there's some concept called black swan blindness or black swan denial, and that it's only really with the benefit of hindsight that you could have seen these coming, that often when you analyze it afterwards, people say, oh yeah, I predicted that, but really they didn't because they didn't see it coming. So black swan examples. So in this context, can you think of any black swan examples of events?
Climate change.
Climate change, good one. Anyone else?
Closing loophole.
Closing Yukon. Yeah, so things like stock market crashes, things like dot-com bubble collapse, 9/11, things like that we tend to refer to as black swan events. Okay, and one of the key points is that the black swan changes are often have non-linear impacts. And so a linear impact is the kind of thing that's really quite predictable. So if you think about your thermostat or your cooker and you turn it up one notch and it goes up 10 degrees and you turn it up another notch, it goes up another 10 degrees. And that's very predictable linear thing. A factory that produces 10 widgets an hour, you open for 5 extra hours, you get 50 extra widgets. But black swans events don't have that same kind of predictability. And I just wanted to show you a quick video which demonstrates this nonlinear effect, and I'll sort of talk a little bit about that. So this is a pendulum, and basically a single pendulum is easy to understand, but when you add a second one, you suddenly add the nonlinearity and you get some crazy effects. So go ahead and start that. And in the book Anti-Fragile, Taleb talks about how the reason why black swan events have all these kind of nonlinear effects is because there's excess energy that's released, often from overreaction. And there's cascade effects, and there's runaway chain reactions and things like that. So just when you think you're starting to know what this pendulum's going to do next, it does something different. Okay.
It's our principal's mind.
I feel like I could sit and watch this all day. Okay, I'm just going to stop it because I'm worried about the time. Brian told me what would happen to me if I went over time. So, okay. And I'm hoping when I click it moves to the right thing. Nope. So every computer I use seems to do something different, and I realized that you can actually click through. So let me just, there we go. Okay, another way to think about black swan events, another term, another buzzword that I'm going to use now is disruptive innovation. And I know everyone's been probably hearing a lot about disruptive innovation, and this term seems to add a kind of veneer of excitement and sophistication to almost anything. And I was talking to one of my colleagues in the library, and you may have seen if you walked across campus that our library is undergoing a big transformation. There's lots of building work going on. And they were talking about how they wanted to be disruptive librarians, and they wanted to have a disruptive library. And I thought this was great, because my vision of a library is where librarians are walking around shushing everyone and getting rid of disruption, but they wanted to explore how they can better serve our users and give them better user journeys and things like that. And so when we talk about disruption, it's a term coined by Clay Christensen, and it was around new innovation. And I'll just use an example of Airbnb. So there's an existing market, and then there's a disruptive technology that comes in, and the old guard doesn't necessarily see it coming. So I know you probably use these kind of services all the time, but Uber disrupting the taxi market, Twitter replacing a lot of newspapers and things like that, Wikipedia replacing book encyclopedias, eBay with kind of garage sales and things like that, Netflix replacing your local video store, and Spotify replacing your local record store. So disruption can help reshape industries, and it's such a buzzword these days that there's actually disruptive consultants and conferences and seminars, and I just read that the University of Southern California is about to start offering a degree in disruption, so you can actually go and get a degree in it. And I'm not quite sure why it sounds so cool, but I think also this is another useful way of looking at change and being positive about change, because to me it makes you feel like you have a bit more control about the change and you're part of something new. Okay, so I'm going to do just a very quick recap. And so we started out looking at some change that's on the horizon for the university, from Brexit, from financial pressures to private sector entrance to the evolving labor market. We now understand a bit about anti-fragility and how this concept can be applied to our bodies and our minds to keep us strong. We looked at black swan events and how difficult they can be to predict, and how they can have a monumental impact. And we also looked at disruption and how we can use this to see things more positively and pushing new boundaries. But I want to do just a little touch on practical things. How does this apply within our sphere? And I started thinking about my work here at Kent and thinking that there's really three areas: processes, systems, and people that we might be able to apply this to. So I think within processes, as a community, we've mainly adopted a lot of agile, lean processes and things like that that help us to fail cheap and be more anti-fragile than before. And so what I'd like to do with each one of those three processes, systems, and people, just go through this fragile, anti-fragile triad and just kind of touch on a few things that came to mind. So within processes, I think there's a lot of sessions that are going to cover this kind of thing, but the big waterfall projects, silos of knowledge, those are all quite fragile things that I think we try not to do. And I think generally we try to move into the more robust processes using GitHub, making sure we check things in and out and we merge code properly, that we have good rollback plans and DR tests, load tests, pen tests, making sure that we're sort of able to stand up to changes. And I think loads of, like I said, anti-fragile, this is an area that people have really adopted in this sphere. One thing, skin in the game, that I just want to touch on. And skin in the game is about having a personal stake in decision making and having a vested interest. And I think a lot of times at universities it feels as if the decision makers aren't really in touch with the people on the ground. And an example of this might be implementing something like a new brand or new designs for your website and not actually being the people on the front face of it trying to roll it out. So it's really trying to have decision making, having the right people involved and having skin in the game. Okay, with systems, I think I sort of touched on legacy websites and things like that as fragile systems. So things with single points of failure or multiple sources of truth, I think, are things we want to avoid. Obviously, robust systems are much more well understood with automated testing and monitoring and redundancy. And moving into anti-fragile, I don't know if people are familiar with the idea of chaos engineering. And this is I think demonstrated really well through the Netflix Simian Army. And the idea of this is that chaos engineering allows you to control the changes and start injecting changes into your systems and trying things out. And they started out with something that was called a chaos monkey. And the chaos monkey, the name comes from the idea of unleashing a wild monkey as a weapon in your data center to randomly shoot down instances and chew through cables. And they always did this on their live services to make sure they were still able to serve their customers. So in practice, it's a tool that disables production instances to make sure that they can survive. And so they're growing their army now. So they have the chaos monkey. In the back, they have the chaos gorilla that actually shuts down bigger things and causes more disruption. They have a latency monkey that introduces artificial delays. They have a doctor monkey that taps into the health checks and checks the CPU. And when it detects unhealthy instances, it removes them. So it's actually about the systems growing and getting better with the result to injecting chaos. Okay, finally, I just want to talk about people. So fragile people, I don't know if you know any, if you work with any, tend to be afraid of change. Their skill sets are maybe atrophying. They're worried, they're risk adverse, and they're likely to say things like, we've always done it this way. Robust people are much more knowledgeable, skillful, and confident. But I think moving into being anti-fragile and having our teams who actually embrace change and like change, who are brave and who are trusted to be brave and who are encouraged to be brave, and that mistakes are not only tolerated but encouraged. And I think exploring some of the resilient traits that we want to encourage in people are things like being proactive, being risk-taking, seeing change in a positive way, and to really try to challenge the moaning culture, because moaning is really a very bad investment in time. If you're spending time doing that, that's not going to change anything. I think also having a sense of humor and having creativity helps us become more anti-fragile. Okay, also one final point is around professional identity. And studies have shown that having a strong sense of your professional identity can help you to withstand change and really welcome change. And I think working within a university context, that we on the website or in the IT support, we're not the rock stars, we're not the students, and we're not the academics. So it can be difficult to find an identity within that. And so I think within your teams, I think it is important to get that kind of collective identity and be proud of what you do. Okay. Finally, so fear of change, it's just nickels and dimes. Don't worry about it, it's fine. Right, so I'm going to wrap up now. And I want to first apologize for all the buzzwords, because I know I've thrown a lot at you, and if anyone's playing buzzword bingo, I think your card's probably full. So you've had Brexit and anti-fragile and black swans, disruptive innovation, resilience, and even a simian army. So I'm sorry for all the buzzwords, but I want to really just plant a couple seeds, things you might want to try when you get back. So trying new things, so intentionally injecting stress into your systems to make them better. I think it's a really good idea, but you want to make sure that you allocate some time for continual service improvement if you do that, because you're bound to find some problems that then need fixing. And I think we've done a little bit of this before, where we've tested things and then we didn't like the results we got. So make sure you allocate the time to actually fix things. Okay, building redundancy into your systems is quite important. Obviously, single points of failure are bad. In nature, we tend to have resilience. We have 2 eyes and 2 ears and 2 kidneys and things like that. So make sure within your people and within your systems you have that resiliency. I think building up those resilient traits within your teams, trying to encourage people to be brave and take risks and not be afraid to make mistakes. And being willing to eat your own dog food as well. So don't just browse the web on your best iPhone and that kind of thing, but actually get an old PC with a really bad connection and see what it looks like for some of your users in some other countries in Africa and see how that works. So, okay, and so I'm going to just wrap up there. And a few final points. So change happens. Trying to eliminate change, trying to ignore change, thinking randomness doesn't exist is a loser's game. So change is the rule. It's not the exception. So refocus that lens. Think about how chaos forces us to clarify what's really important and what's not. And think about less being more. That think small projects, think fail fast, think building your teams, and reiterate and just keep growing. Okay, finally, I just want to leave you with a thought that I think sums up anti-fragile really well, and this is a great attitude to have. So this is from a 17th century poet and samurai, Mitsuta Masahide. And so now I'm going to leave you with that thought, and I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to let Andrew come and give his talk. So.
But first we have time for some questions, and I'm not going to be a single point of failure. I'm going to have running up and down with me. We might race to the back. So if you have any questions, can you give your name and institution? And there might also be some questions from any remote users. Any questions? We're both running for you, Mike. Mike first.
Just want to say it was really enjoyable and taught great scene setting for the whole theme of the event.
Thank you.
What's it you do? I'm a philosophy lecturer. You're actually a web monger yourself. I genuinely don't know. I'm not going to
Speak to Mike with the microphone.
Oh, okay. Now, I'm the head of systems, so I kind of rose up. I was a programmer, and then I became the web development manager, and now I'm the head of systems. So I look after some great teams, like Mark's team, looking after the website, and the university student data system and Moodle and things like that.
Very intimate.
Thank you. Hi.
I'm Jane from Birkbeck, University of London. I just wondered what the response of the university community was to the university coming out so boldly with the European statement, because it's quite a bold thing in times of uncertainty and quite admirable. I just wondered if you could just speak to that.
Well, I think certainly within the institution, I think it was accepted very well. I'm not really sure I have the answer to how the rest of the community accepted it. I wish Mary was here to talk to that. I don't know if anyone else from Kent is able to answer that question better than me. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. Or I guess we have the community here. So.
Hi, this is Marika. I'm from QAA. I just scrolled down something about you said a loss of control of the curriculum by working with employers, and I just thought that was interesting because you talked about chaos and trying new things, but you seem to be a bit apprehensive there, so I wondered if you had any thoughts about whether the future involves working more with employers.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it definitely does. And I think the offer for the apprenticeships is just such an interesting one. I've been seeing it on the news, and on adverts saying that, you get this degree and you earn a wage and you have no debts. And I think, but as we saw from my list, that it definitely is tied to Glaxo wanting, a certain number of chemists. And so it does get tied to industry. It is a big change. And to me, it sort of takes away from the just away from the kind of philosophy of what HE traditionally was about, knowledge and things like that it's much more about the labor market. And I think it is an interesting change. And I guess you're right, I probably do find that a little bit scary. But I shouldn't, I should embrace it. So I think it will, if it brings new ways, for us to get funding and to get new students and maybe entice students who wouldn't be able to come to university, then that's all good. We just need to get used to it and embrace it.
Time for one final question. If not, can we show our appreciation to Bonnie? We are a couple of minutes ahead of time, which means that I should be able to go through to this raffle draw. If I can just find it. Oops, I can't find it. Okay, those of you who are here for the first time, hopefully your name is on this list, and if I just copy those names and paste them in, roll the drums. I knew I'd get you to sing. Will Kemp. Is Will Kemp here? Yay! And so I think after Andrew's talk, you can come down and choose one of the prizes.
So you mean Paul? Is Paul here? Is Paul Bargraves? Paul's kindly donated one of his books, so you win Paul's book.
And the second prize from this session, there was a survey for the people who couldn't make it. So we asked them for the reasons why they couldn't make it, and if they were willing to share their name, we said we'd put them in the draw. Duncan Ireland isn't here because he went to see the Nations tour of British and Irish Nations tour in New Zealand. He was, oops, not that one. It's over here. So Harry Maguire. Anyone know Harry Maguire? Strathclyde. Okay, so we've got his email address and we'll get in touch with him. So that's great. So thanks for that. And now over to, which of your slides are you? Oops. So I'm now pleased to welcome Andrew Millar, who's a colleague on the advisory group. Oh yes, the advisory group members, it's over there, you should be able to identify with the rosette. And so Andrew was kind enough to propose a talk for this theme on the end of the world as we know it, and the University of Dundee having a good crisis and not wasting it. So,
thank you very much. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name, as Brian says, is Andrew Millar from the University of Dundee. I'm head of Web Services. I've been in post for about 20 months now, but I've been at the university for 14 years, so I've been through a huge period of time at the university where we've gone through a lot of change. And if you've been at IWMW for any number of years, or if you've been at the institution for any number of years, you've probably been through a huge amount of change as well. So just to get the kind of lie of the land, just by a show of hands up, whose institution has been through financial difficulty or is in financial difficulty just now?
So they claim.
So they claim. Hands up if your institution has been restructured in the last 5 years.
How many times?
We're not offering prizes for the number of times you've been restructured. Your institution has been rebranded in the last 5 years. Yeah, we're getting a common theme here. Thinking about your department, has your department been restructured in the last 5 years? Yeah, we're getting the kind of idea of how these things are going to go. You've moved departments in the last 5 years, so you've shifted departments from one place to another. Yep. You've lost friends. There are people here, Brian, Claire, who have had to move on because of the changes that have been happening in higher education. And I know from our situation in Dundee, I've lost friends and colleagues because of restructuring, because of change. But what I kind of want to say today is well done to all of you who have arrived and who are here. You're the survivors. Well done. Great. Fantastic. But there's a different way of looking at this. You can look at all the change in a negative way, and the kind of stuff that Bonnie's been saying has been kind of alluding to this. But actually, the people who are here today were also the benefactors of the change as well. Now, that's not a popular thing to say. It's not an easy thing to say, especially when you've lost friends and colleagues because of the changes that you've gone through. A couple of years ago at IWMW, there was a man from Precedent came and he spoke, a guy called Rob Van Tol. And one of the things he said stuck with me, and it was this: to bring about change, have a good crisis and don't waste it. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it's something that stuck in my head when Rob was talking about it. And in terms of all those things that we talked about, the things we put our hands up for, Dundee's had all of them. We've had big deficit budgets, we've had voluntary severance packages, we've had restructures, we've had rebrands, we've had all these kind of things. We're having a crisis, but we're trying to make the most of it. And what I want to do this afternoon is try and tell you a little bit about how Dundee's tried to capitalise on that and try to make the most of that situation. Because the thing is, out of great trial comes great opportunity. Now, I don't know how you look at that kind of statement. You might look at it like that and fall about laughing and thinking that's complete rubbish. But there's actually great opportunity we can have, because what it does is it creates a culture of change. And that's a culture of change that you can grab hold of and you can use to your benefit. And that's what we've tried to do at Dundee. And I'm going to try and explain a little bit about that. This was our organisational structure pre-2015, okay? We had these 4 massive colleges, and they were put in place to try and devolve some of the resources and the money and the talent out to them where they could be used to best effort. The problem is, when you do that, you start to lose control. This is how Web looked pre-2015. We were what could be termed feral when it came to Web. If you had a loud voice, if you were a well-respected institution, you could do whatever you wanted, and it didn't really matter whether the professionals were saying that's the way to do it or not. Hands up if that's the way it is in your institution as well. It's a common story. One of the things, the remit for Web sat within IT. Now, I could go around this audience and I could ask you all where you sit within your organisation. And some of you will sit within IT, some of you will sit within marketing, some of you will sit in corporate comms, and wherever you sit, it might work for you. For us, IT did not work, because IT was not interested in the day-to-day business of Web. So one of the things the university did, and is one of the things that has helped us most, is transition the remit to marketing. But we didn't have a marketing department. For an institution not to have a centralised marketing function is just crazy. But we had no centralised marketing department. However, change happened. 2015, this is what happened. We ripped out an entire level of management. Entire level from our structure, brought things up, restructured our schools, went from 15 schools down to 9 schools, and we made a very subtle change in how we called our support services. We changed them from support services to professional services to try and get across the message that we actually know what we're doing. Doesn't sometimes seem like that, but actually we know what we're doing, and we spend our days looking at this kind of stuff and trying to understand it and trying to help these people. As I say, the remit moved from IT into external relations, and external relations was kind of reborn, and here's what they did. They transitioned all the web people and all the creative people and all the communications people into a single directorate. So marketing now had control over web and creative services and corporate comms. Corporate comms being press and social and those kind of areas. For the first time, the university had control of the 3 major communication channels. Something that hadn't happened in the university before. What they also did was they transitioned the departments that were responsible for external communications, so student recruitment, events, so things like graduation, things like the big public engagement events, and the alumni, they transitioned them into the central directorate, the external relations directorate. So we not only had control over the channels, we had control over the departments that sent the messages out as well. Maybe control's the wrong word, but we were able to work with these people. This was really good for us, and it did 2 things for us that changed the way we do web. Now, these changes would never have happened had we not been going through a crisis. Okay, it's important to remember that. They gave us a voice, and this has been brilliant. Our director now sits on the executive group, which is the senior level management within Dundee. So you've got the principal, you've got the vice principals, you've got the university secretary, and you've got our director, having a voice at a senior level. But it also gave us direction. For the first time, they said, your primary remit is to look at student recruitment, to look at income generation and try to get those things sorted out, and it allowed us to push back on a whole load of stuff. We would never have been able to do that had we not been going through a crisis. So we were able to capitalise that and move on. So as I said, we had this web infrastructure, and we were feral, and we were doing everything in different ways and different patterns and different CMSs, and it was just a bit of a mess. So we pulled everybody together into a single team. The problem with that was we were a team by name only. And we were all involved in our own little projects. So we restructured again. And I'm one of those evil people that did a restructure. Okay, it's forced upon me, but it seems to be working for us. And this is what we did. We split the team up into, we didn't split the team, we put people into 5 different areas. Content, design, development, support, and user experience. For the first time, we had control over the entire life cycle of web. And we were able to start looking at changes about how we do things, rather than working between different departments like IT who really weren't interested in web and these different things. So we pulled together all these different people into web services. But to be honest, that's the easy bit. It's something that a lot of you will not have control over, but that's the easy bit. If we simply deliver a new website, we'll have failed in our task. We need to change the culture of how we do web within our institution. If we're going to be successful at all, that has to be our primary focus. There's 2 types of culture. There's the internal culture within your team. This cannot just be my responsibility to change the culture of the team. It's the entire team's responsibility to try and change that culture. And it's a very difficult thing to do sometimes. There's things that I can do about making it a safe environment. There's things I can do about making it an environment where people can flourish and can move on and have the chances to do things. But we also need people to engage with it as well. this takes years. We're about a year into this change just now, and we're still, some days you wake up and you think, we are getting this, yes. And other days you wake up and you think, oh my word, we've just gone back a year. But these changes take a long time, and they take a long time to progress through. But also external culture. The external culture, the people in the university, round about who you're trying to work with. This takes years as well, but the thing we've got in our favour is we're having a crisis. People are actively looking for change, they're actively looking for answers, they're actively looking for ways out of the problems. So, I was asked 6 months into the role to come to the University Management Group, which includes that executive group, the deans, the school managers and the directors of service, the senior level people in just about every place in the university, and present to them what we needed to do with web. So here's what I did. I scared them with data. If you are not in control of your analytics, if you're not delving into your analytics, can I please make a plea to you, go and look at your analytics, because there is wonderful stuff in it that will help you make changes and will help you move changes forward. I went into that meeting and here's what I said to them. We have 537,000 items being indexed by Google currently across the Dundee.ac.uk domain. If I was to put just one person on that to look at every item for just 10 minutes and decide whether it's relevant or not, it's going to take us 53 years. So doing that is not really an option, and the university is not going to dedicate somebody for 53 years just to go through every little bit. What's more concerning is that only 36,000 items actually reside on the main corporate website. I have no clue where all those other things are and what they're doing. From a security, from a compliance perspective, that is scary, because anything could be happening out there and we don't know. Somebody then put up their hand in that meeting, and if you get asked this question, you know you're onto a good thing. He put up his hand and he says, how can we help you to solve this problem? Could have kissed the guy. I didn't. Wonderful question to have. So following on from that, we produced this graph. Now, if you like graphs, and I like graphs, and Paul's going to disagree with this, but Excel is just a wonderful, wonderful tool. Paul and I have had disagreements about this, but Excel is a wonderful tool. And here's the graph that we produced. We went into Google Analytics and we took all the page views for a year and we sorted them into little silos as to where the information was, generally departments. And then we sorted them by the number of page views. And we got this wonderful long tail graph. This graph will change the world. I'm quite convinced of it. The blue line is the external views.
That is a classic graph. That's a zip curve. That is the standard of website. Am I preempting your next slide here?
You might be, yes. It's a long tail graph. Jerry McGovern, when he talks about his top tasks, this is a kind of long tail graph. But this is done in terms of page views. And then did a rather naughty thing in the meeting. I pointed out where all the school sites were on the graph. Some people were rightly pleased. Life sciences, medicine, DJK, Duncan Johnston. They were quite happy because they were at the top end. Social sciences weren't terribly happy because they're down at the bottom end. I said, well, we need a new website. No. That big spike at the start, that's our course pages. 500,000 of them are your courses. Guess where you're spending your time? Those top 10 sections account for 73% of our traffic. We spend way too much time on the right-hand side of that graph and not dealing with the things on the left-hand side of the graph. Now, page views are not always an accurate measurement of quality, I know that, but in terms of affecting change, this is a wonderful graph. And it gets people thinking. So I presented this to them, and they started to engage, and we've had quite a good time changing our course pages and starting to upgrade our course pages, and actually getting more engagement from them, getting more bang for our buck. But it soon got to the stage where they weren't really quite happy with the things that we're saying. They were getting kind of fed up with the things that we were saying, and they were asking us to do different things, and we kind of had to change the way we do things, change the way we talk to them. We had to make it something about something that they cared about. And this is where we had a bit of a fundamental change in how we do things. We as a community have talked long and hard about a digital first approach. I'm going to say something very unpopular, and all the consultants in the room can close their ears just now. Academics don't care. I've said it. You can chuck me out later on. Academics don't really care about digital first. They don't care how it happens. They have their own set of things they're trying to accomplish, and they need to try and get on with it. So we changed the way we started to talk about things, and we started to talk about customer first, trying to understand what it is the customer is wanting. The problem with talking about digital first approach is that you sometimes assume that there's a digital answer to the question. And the problem is digital might not be the answer to every question. It'll be the answer to part of the question, I'm quite sure, but in terms of that entire package, in terms of that entire problem, it's not going to be the answer to every single question. So we started to change how we were talking to them, and we started to ask them this: what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And this is a great question to ask people, because they'll come at you and say, our website's not working for us. That's a problem. Okay, what do you want? We need a new website. No. That's not a problem. That's a solution to a problem. But we don't know what the problem is yet. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Well, my course is not recruiting. Now we have a common language that we can both come at and suggest different things. We can understand the problem. We can say, well, why are you not recruiting? Is it because the market's no longer there? Is it because you're not getting your message across to the students? How's it not working for us? What we can then do is start to create a full stack solution. So you remember how we've restructured within marketing? We have control over the big different channels. So we can create a full stack solution. We can do a bit of web, we can do a bit of social, we can do a bit of print, we can do a coordinated thing that brings everything together, and we can then start to track by campaign rather than by channel. Because we can look at page views and say, well, that's very popular, that's not very popular, but unless we know that full journey, that full story, we're not getting the entire picture. So this is starting to work for small problems. And it's starting to work for little things. And we are seeing huge changes in Dundee. So we're top 10 in the UK in terms of the National Student Survey. We've been named Scottish University of the Year 2 years in a row. That's been unprecedented. I don't think it's happened before. We're first in Scotland for the International Student Barometer. Our complete university guide rankings are going in the right direction. We're a world top 200 institution, and we just got TEF Gold. So things are happening. Has all this happened because of web? No. Has this happened because of external relations? No. It's happened because the university's been in a crisis, and it started to look seriously and address the problems that it's facing. So it's starting to work for small problems, but we needed to go bigger. And we needed to really tackle the big things, and we really needed investment to be able to do that. So we were offered the chance to put in an investment bid, and we were then called before the University Management Group again to explain why we wanted this money. And I have quite a few friends in different schools, and I'd heard that they were starting to talk in various different school committees that the web is broken. That's what they were saying. So I stood up in this management group and said, I know you guys are saying the web is broken. Here's what I have to say to you. I agree. What you don't realise is that the web is broken in 3 different ways. It's broken in terms of its content, it's broken in terms of its design, and it's broken in terms of its technology. We can't just look at one of these things to solve the big problem. We need to tackle all 3 of them if we're going to be successful. We have lots of content. We don't starve in terms of our content. We have lots of people wanting to give us content. But as Pete will testify at the back, the content's not always that great. And you might be saying the same thing as well. Our design is no longer cutting it. We've hacked it, and we've changed it, and we've tweaked it, and we've rebranded it, but in terms of actually solving the core problems, we need to do a complete remake of this design. Our infrastructure is no longer fit for purpose. It's running on machines that were really in danger of falling to bits, and there were times when the server fell over and we weren't sure whether we could get it back again. And it was one of the main servers, and we'd have been stuck. We managed to get bits and pieces done, but the infrastructure that runs it is not going to be capable of doing it for much longer. We benchmarked our homepage, and this is, if you're trying to get buy-in, benchmark your homepage from different locations. China's a key market for us. It's probably a key market for a lot of you. And our homepage is taking about 18 seconds to load. And we said, well, we could chuck a bit of technology at this in terms of putting a CDN on it to try and make the images and stuff load faster, but it's not making that much of a difference. And you can quote Nielsen Norman and all these different people saying that, the first couple of seconds are the most important. If ours is taking 10 seconds to load, it's not really cutting the mustard. What I really wanted them to understand was how we got here. And this next picture is a corker, right? It's brilliant because it completely explains how we've built our website. We started off as a little bungalow in '97, and we've restructured and we've extended and we've changed and we've modified and we've repainted and whatever else. And now it's at the stage where it's kind of like a Tetris house. I don't really want to touch it because I don't know what's going to happen if I touch this bit and then it's going to all fall down. That's how we've built our website. That's how you've treated the website. It's everybody else's problem except mine. And it is my problem. I'm head of web services, so it is my problem. But in terms of you academics, you look at the website, you say it's not working for us, it's your fault, it's your problem. And we go, well, we've been asking you for content, we've been asking you for images, why have you not been giving it to us? And we have this conversation, this kind of pointing fingers type of thing. We've put our content in silos. And the problem with silos is you then need to try and understand where on earth in the university hierarchy things sit before you can understand where on earth you can get the answer to your question. This is what we've done with our silos. What I really wanted the university to understand is that the strength of Dundee, the stuff that people are interested in, is not our policies, it's not our procedures, it's not our hierarchy. It's our teaching, it's our research, and it's our people. And that's what we're failing to deliver just now. So, easy problem to solve, right? No. Because they'll all go, well, we need a new website. That's not going to solve the problem. If I deliver to you a new website, I will have failed in my challenge to get the web sorted for the University of Dundee. It's not easy because we have 25 different types of desktop browser alone coming to the site. We've got 5,500 different types of mobile device, each with different sizes of resolution and screen size and capabilities. We've got over 230 different countries and territories coming, all with different cultural norms. So the UI principles that work in the West, they don't work in China, or they're different in China. We've got apps starting to come up. Millennials that are entering the job market are saying, well, we want to interact with the virtual environment through apps, and we want that to affect the physical environment, and things are constantly changing. And that's just what we know about already, and that's kind of what we're sure about already. There's things like Alexa that's coming. Has anybody got an Alexa device? I am surprised. I have an Alexa device. Some people have an Alexa device. Suddenly people are no longer touching browsers to access information. They're no longer physically touching devices. And these are things that we need to think about as a community. How do we get our information out into some of these devices so that people can discover them? These may fail. My Alexa device sits in a box now and I never look at it because it kept on activating every time the TV was on. It just annoyed me because she could never figure out what the TV was saying. Did anybody hear the story about the doll's house in Alexa? A little girl in America went up to the Alexa device and said, I want a new doll's house. And it went and ordered it for her and appeared the next morning. That was really funny until it was picked up by the local news. And they said the exact same phrase. And all the Alexa devices across the country started ordering doll's houses. Really funny, but there are big issues that we need to consider. We're starting to dabble in VR. Now, in terms of us taking Dundee to the world, VR is a wonderful thing. It allows us to do some immersive stuff that really gives people a taste of where Dundee is and what Dundee's got to offer. Wearable technology. Direct links between the physical and virtual worlds. And there's real potential for things to have great changes here. There's ethical questions as well. Is it ethical if you know a student is 5 minutes late for their lecture and they're still in the union to ping them a message to say you should really be in your lecture? Probably not. Is it ethical to say we'll have a coffee ready for you when you arrive at your meeting? All the academics said yes, absolutely, we would love that. There are big ethical questions about what we want to do. Artificial intelligence. Starting to work with chatbots. You can start to order plane tickets, you can start to order pizza, you can start to do lots of things by interacting with a chatbot on the other end. But how do we get that information to us? How is our information stored? What are we doing? So, a new CMS is not going to solve this problem by itself. We can put a new CMS in, we can put new infrastructure in, we can put all this different technology in. It's not going to solve the problem by itself. It's time for a culture change. And this is what Dundee is starting to realise. And Dundee is starting to realise, not just in terms of web, but in terms of the whole business of higher education, that we need to change the culture around about how we do things. Web is not going to solve these problems by itself. Web will solve these problems by working with people and directorates and institutions both within the university and out with the university to address the problems that we're problems we're seeing and coming up with solutions. So, how are we going to do that? We've now got the people in place, we've now got the structure in place, we've now got the voice at the higher level, we've now got people understanding part of the problem. We need to rip out and replace everything we've got. One of the biggest problems we have, and Bonnie kind of alluded to it, was legacy websites. People thinking, this is my website. You cannot touch my website. This is my content. It's not your content, it's not your website. It's something that the university is projecting to the outside world that we need to try and make the best possible use of. So we're looking to try and rip out and replace everything. And building from the ground up. One of the key responsibilities, one of the things I forgot to say is that restructure of the university, of the web services team. A manager was appointed over each of those different areas, and their specific responsibility was to go out and to look at the best practice in the industry. It used to be that the web person did everything. Content, design, development, information architecture, they did everything. But they're now niche industries. And we can see from the talks that we have here that they are different things and different people have interests in different things. So each of those managers is responsible for looking at the best practice and trying to bring that into the University of Dundee. So we're going to rip it out and we're going to rebuild it. And we're going to rebuild it in a fashion that means that people can get access to the information that they want. That it's not siloed, that you don't need to understand the structure of the university. You don't need to understand that student funding sits within student services, sits within professional services, that nobody cares. They just want access to information that's going to help them. There are people who are needing help, there are people who are desperate for help, and they can't find it because we can't get things ordered in the way we need to do it. So we're going to rip out and build from the ground up. At CMS, am I over my time or? No, sorry. I saw Brian look at his arm. It's always worrying. A CMS is not going to change this. It's going to help, it's going to do a little bit, but it's not going to change this. And we don't know in the future where things are going to go. We don't know what the end point is for our content. We don't know which systems we're going to need to pull in. The university is spending a heck of a lot of money ripping out all their business systems and replace them as well. So we don't know what's going to come in from different places. the CMS, I'm going to stick my neck out here. The time of the CMS is heading towards an end, I think. And we need to start looking at platforms that are agnostic of the endpoint, because we don't know where they're going to end up. Whether it's going to be on the web, whether it's going to be on a wristwatch, whether it's going to be on a TV screen, whether it's going to be on, a big massive TV screen in the gym or wherever else. We need to start getting away from CMSs and start thinking about content management systems. Things that manage our content and things that can push them out to wherever we need to put them. Because we don't know where the data is going to end up. So, have we been successful? We've got the structure, we've got the voice at the top, we've got the people in place, and we just heard last week that we've got the money that we need to do it. So, come back next year, and we'll find out. I may not be here next year, I may be under a rock someplace, but we'll see where we are next year. Thank you very much. Please make them easy.
I'm Chris Duttridge from the University of Southampton. I disagree with something you said.
Go on then.
I get uncomfortable when, as professional services, we say we should rip out everything and we own everything that the university is doing, because when academics hear that, they think we're going to take away their professional communication in their field. Some of what academics do on the web is then communicating between an archaeologist and another archaeologist on their archaeology blog, and they don't trust us, and rightly so, to tell them how to talk to other archaeologists in a public forum.
Yeah.
And so it's okay for us saying it here, but in front of the academics, don't scare them with that.
I would agree with you to a certain extent. I think it goes back to what Bonnie was saying about introducing stress into the system sometimes. So that sometimes there needs to be a forced change for things to happen. What a big part of the success of this will be communication. So I will probably be spending the next year, the vast majority of next year, next year, communicating with people and going out and explaining what we're doing. We started to get the buy-in. We started to get people to look at the difference and look at how we can better implement things. A lot of what we're doing is in response to the things that they're asking for. So we're able to go, actually, we agree with you, and here's how we're going to solve it. So I think you're right, but I think it's that's a very political answer to give. But I think you're partly right, and I think I'm partly right.
Hi, David Edwards, University of Nottingham. I was interested, you talked about structures, you talked about departmental structure, putting people to content design, dev, UX, support roles, and also about building whole solutions across web, digital, print, automated campaigns, all that sort of thing. How practically are all those bits that you split the team up into for functional specialisation? How do you draw people together from all those groups in order to provide the integrated solutions to everyone need? Who's managing that now?
It's a good question. So we all report into a single director, and she has been instrumental in pulling us all together. I wouldn't have said we've completely cracked it. We're still working out how we do this. We know that it's the right way to do it. Again, it comes back to communication. We're having an awful lot of getting to know each other, about how the problems each other's trying to solve. A lot of it's trying to break down some of the barriers that existed there before. One of the problems that we've had is that the people that were drawn together used to be in different areas of the university that didn't always trust the other side of the university. So we've had problems trying to get past those political, cultural, social differences before we can start to bring those people together. It takes a long time, and it will only happen by properly communicating with each other, and when there's problems arising, going and speak to them. And it also means setting aside time to actually sit down and look at how we manage these things. And we are starting to do that as a kind of management team, but we're not there yet. So come back next year and I'll maybe have a better answer for you.
We have another question here, and then Claire, there's something a few rows behind you as a question.
Hello, I'm Blair Ferguson, digital manager at Leeds Trinity University. Just a question about where CRM and CRM integration sits,
yep,
and how you're preparing for changes in data protection legislation, that whole area. Is there one owner, or is someone driving the different aspects?
So the university is going through what they're calling business transformation, and that's a specific. The backstory to that woohoo was more actually just on the website for business transformation, and it's
no website.
And I think we'll move on from that comment before it gets me in trouble. Business transformation is responsible for ripping out all the business systems, so HR, finance, payroll, student research, and implementing it with a completely new integrated system. Inquiry management, kind of CRM type functionality will be part of that. We're developing an interim inquiry management system just now, but the new one will come on stream soon, next year time. I'm not quite sure when that's going to be yet, but business transformation kind of holds the key to that. One of the things we're trying to do is work with that department to try and understand the requirements as quickly as possible. We've got a lot of good friends in that department that are trying to help us with that. So again, it comes back to communication and speaking to people at the right time and trying to get your face known in those departments. So we have a bit of responsibility as well. We work very closely with the data protection manager or information security, something to do with security manager. So he kind of guides us and helps us with those kind of things as well.
Just a further question, do you have a corporate systems group across different areas that deal with corporate systems and the integration side?
We have business systems that deal with the tech side of it, so they sit within IT. They work very closely, so they're split into student systems, finance systems, HR systems, and they work very closely with the director that they are responsible for. So business systems, HR will work with HR director. So there is a kind of oversight board as well, a kind of project management site board that kind of brings all that together as well. So I don't pretend to understand all of it, so I can only give you a limited answer. Oh, St Andrews.
Hi, I'm Colleen from the University of St Andrews. I agreed with a lot of what was in that talk, but I have one specific question both for you guys and really for everyone else in the room, because I think we're very much in agreement that going forward it isn't about a content management system per se, it is about a platform that can hold content to be published out to multiple channels, and that's something that we're thinking about going forward. Is anyone else doing this? Is there anyone else who wants to come and talk to us about this kind of thing?
I think if you go to Rich's talk, masterclass, he might have solved it already. We used to do it in life sciences. The director where I came from, we looked at content modelling. I think content modelling is at the core of this, and understanding the types of content that you're trying to publish out. In the past, it's just been a case of just stick it on a page and no context of whether it's an address or whether it's a publication or whether it's a news item or whatever else. I think that's at the key, and that's going to be at the heart of what we do when we start to rip out and replace things. But yes, I'm sure Morag would be loving to have a conversation about content modelling as well. She's our expert.
Hi, Tom Wright from University of Lincoln. You talked about customer first approach. Perhaps wondered if you could say a bit more about the role of students.
I would see students as a customer, and I think there are different customers for different parts of the website. I think what we're trying to understand is who all our customers are, and I think that's one of the big problems. The customers that we're dealing with are not just students, they're parents, they're researchers, they're other academics, they're partner institutions, they're funding bodies, and we're trying to understand who those customers are. I think when you start to talk about a customer instead of a student, you start to understand there's somebody who is looking for a certain level of service. And I think that's the power of changing that term. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
Can I add something, Andrew?
Yeah.
Sorry.
To the microphone,
yeah. And just to add something to that, one of the Pete from Dundee. One of the
You're not allowed to disagree, by the way.
disagree.
That's how your culture works, is it?
That's
one of the things we often have is, we hear, you need to get student voice in. And then we get handed a panel of student union execs, school presidents, and other hyper-engaged people who are practically staff. And it's one of the things we've been trying to get ahead now is like the people we need to think about as well are the ones who kind of coast. And it's always, we always get sent these hyper-engaged, so they'll come to us and say, we need to know about all of this and all of this and all of these wonderful things, and actually they don't. So it's working out the different types of students, and it's trying to get to those ones who are really hard to get to. That's the tricky bit.
Student bar.
We actually do have a student in the room, by the way. So just so that, we might have just one student in this room. Is there any other students in this room?
If they're at the conference, they're probably hyper-engaged.
Oh, I'm so engaged. I understand along the point of looking at sort of students as customers. I kind of get where you're coming from with that sort of website side of things, but it's also not to lose that disconnect, because students will be kind of this big driving force. I imagine you get quite a lot of traffic from students for the websites.
Yep.
I understand it's kind of hard to lose that. You don't want to disconnect from the students, but you also want to understand that there are more people, like the parents will look at that, and they'll obviously expect something different than some 18-year-old something that's coming to the website.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. One of the first things we did with the restructure, and you'll see it, is put Rob up the back as in charge of user experience. We hadn't had that person before. Rob's primary responsibility is going out and understanding the needs of the customer. So the students are the kind of primary focus. Rob spends the vast majority of his time going out and speaking to people and trying to understand the hurdles that they're trying to get over, and feeding that back into the team so that we can start to design solutions to the problem that they are coming against. So you're absolutely right. The students are at the core of what we're needing to do.
Anyone else got a question? If not, I have. So there's been a lot about sort of restructures, and this will come up a lot, change, restructures, people moving about, people's job roles changing perhaps. But that's kind of the what is happening. I mean, is there anything in the new the new wave of Dundee around governance, so the how people are going to work to make sure that in 5 years this isn't all revert back?
Yeah, this is why we've employed Paul Boag to sort it all out for us. No, I think governance has to be at the core of this, and it's one of the things we struggled with, because with ripping everything out, that's fine, that's the easy part. It's putting everything back in again in some kind of semblance of order and some kind of rational thought behind it. So we're going to be embedding governance as part of that process, and it's probably one of the first things, Paul? First things we need to do when we're going along the process. So, absolutely.
Any more questions? Right, we'll just leave it back tonight.
If not, can we just thank Andrew in the normal way? Do you want to?
Yeah, all right, so tonight it's the conference dinner. So I hope you've all got your black ties and ball gowns. No, just come as you are, it's fine. So it is about a 5-10 minute walk across the campus, or the way I did it earlier, 15, because I went the wrong way. So probably what we'll do, if people fancy doing this, is, has everybody seen the K bar? K? Okay. So where... That's it now, it'll be stuck in your head. So where Dolce Vita is, there's a bar just literally around the corner. So people might want to go straight there for a drink after their session, because we won't be back in here now, you'll be going off to your sessions. So if people want to meet in K-Bar at about, well, we might do 2 different shifts. We'll probably put something on Slack. So the last walking bus will leave from the K-Bar at 6:45, which means we'll be there for 7. But if one leaves early, we'll let you know. So if you're not on the Slack channel, it's probably worth getting on it, because we will post stuff like that. So yes, K-Bar, 6:45. Obviously you can go there whenever you like after the next workshop.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And the rooms for the various sessions was posted on Slack, but in addition, they're displayed up there. So you should have the session code on your badge, and that is associated with a particular room, which are not too far away, and people will point you in the directions of where they are lately. Increase the size.
Should I just say where the rooms are?
Yeah, do you want?
So the rooms are all, so again where Dolce Vita is, there's another set of stairs there. So if you go up the stairs, there should now be signs on the walls to tell you all where the rooms are, and each room's got a sign on the door. Just to say that anyone wearing a black rosette is an advisory group member, so you can ask us anything. And Andrew needs his badge. Where's Andrew?
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us online for IWMW 2017. We hope you've enjoyed today's thought-provoking presentations and would like to thank all of our speakers for their contributions. Please continue to share your reactions to the topics raised today using the IWMW17 hashtag. We hope you can join us tomorrow for more live coverage from IWMW 2017.